Hey guys, today we are starting our Unit 6 material. Remember I told you that we're putting Unit 5 and Unit 6 together because they happen at the same time. So at the same time that the reform movements that we've been talking about are happening in Unit 5, you also have a lot of westward movement or westward migration, which is going to cause more sectionalism, which eventually is going to lead to the Civil War. So this is all of the expansion and sectionalism stuff that's happening at the same time that reform stuff is happening. So we call these notes manifest destiny. And so right off the bat, I just want to define what manifest destiny actually is, because you probably have never heard that word before. So manifest destiny is a fancy word for the belief that Americans thought it was inevitable and ordained by God that they should expand all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So Americans are going to use the idea of manifest destiny to justify going to war with Mexico or taking land from Great Britain or kicking Native Americans off the land they've been living on for years, all because they believe that expanding America from the Atlantic Ocean on the east to the Pacific Ocean on the west is, number one, inevitable, like going to happen, and number two, ordained or allowed by God. So if you want to kind of break down what manifest and destiny actually mean, manifest means obvious and destiny means fate. So again, it's this American belief that westward expansion is obvious and it is the fate of the American people. This is the most famous image that goes along with manifest destiny. I just want to point out a few things in this image to you real quick. It does a really good job of showing the market revolution. So things like the steel plow down here, or railroads or telegraph lines, rivers and canals, things like that. It also does a good job of showing that everyone is moving literally west. If you see, everything is moving to the left in this image. It also shows some of the dangers that people experience moving out west that we'll talk a little about, like Native American attacks, predators, weather and terrain and stuff like that. But in the middle, what you probably saw the first time you looked at this image is this woman. And this woman often represents American progress or the American spirit. She's bringing with her technology, right? The telegraph. She's bringing with her people. She's bringing with her Christianity, right? She looks kind of like an angel. She's bringing with her liberty. Think about the Statue of Liberty itself. It's, a woman wearing a toga, right? So she's bringing with her everything that is American as people are moving out west. So reasons to move west. I would say the biggest reason why people in the 1800s wanted to move west was for new economic opportunities. That basically just means new ways to make money. So that would be like buying land. And a lot of land out west was really cheap. So buy land and set up a farm or something like that to make money. People also wanted to establish new trade markets. For example, when a lot of people move to California, you can trade a lot easier with Asia. And so just because it's geographically closer. So you can open up new markets to new goods and things like that. There are also people on the East Coast that want to escape debt. Think about like the Panic of 1837 and some economic crises that have been happening. There are definitely people who are like, I just want to start over. I want a new life and I want to do it out west. And then there's also the possibility of gold, especially with the gold rush in California. People just thought like, oh, gold is in all the rivers. It's in all the ground. I'll move out west and find gold really easily. A lot of people were motivated by these beautiful Hudson River School paintings, right, of the American frontier, showing the American West as being, so full of land and it's so open. And people were like, I want to live there, not in this dirty, gross city or my old rundown farm on the East Coast. I want to move out west. And there are some people like the Mormons that we'll talk about in a second who wanted to escape discrimination. So talking a little bit about Mormon migration specifically, the Mormon Church, or the Church of Latter-day Saints, is a Christian church that was founded in the 1830s in New York by Joseph Smith. So it's definitely part of the Second Great Awakening. We've already talked a little bit about them before, but Mormons were discriminated against for a few reasons. One is because they had a separate book from the Bible, that went with the Bible, called the Book of Mormon. They also practiced polygamy or having multiple wives back then. They don't do it today. And they also remained pretty economically prosperous during the Panic of 1837. And so for all these reasons, they would face persecution or discrimination where they were living. Eventually, Joseph Smith, the founder, was arrested and he was killed by an angry mob. And this was enough motivation for the Mormon Church, who was then led by Brigham Young, to move out west to a place where they could practice their religion freely. So they moved from Illinois to what is today Utah, near the Great Salt Lake, and they actually established Salt Lake City. The route that they took is today known as the Mormon Trail, and here are some actual Mormon migrants who were using the Mormon Trail to move out west. And out west, they were allowed to, live their lives freely, practice their religion freely, and even today, that's why there's a large population of Mormons living there. That's also why Brigham Young University is there as well, named after Brigham Young. So the Mormon Trail was not just the only way to get out west. It is more specifically, obviously, for the Mormons. There were lots of different trails and routes to go out west and lots of different ways of transportation. The most popular mode of transportation by far was the covered wagon. It looks like this right here. A covered wagon would be used to transport all of your possessions to wherever it was you were moving out west. It was usually pulled by a horse or by an ox. The thing is, though, you are not allowed to ride in the wagon. The wagon carries your stuff. You have to walk. The only way you could really ride in the wagon is if you were a baby, if you were really old, or if you were sick. Other than that, you're walking. Wagons also typically traveled on what were called wagon trains, just in big groups. Think like strength in numbers or safety in numbers. That could provide, safety from Native American attacks, or even like if your wagon were to break down, hopefully someone in your wagon train had some resources to help you fix your wagon. But trains become really popular as a way to get out west later on in the 1800s. It really isn't until 1869 until the very first railroad is finished that will connect the West Coast with the East Coast. Up until then, most people are just using wagons to move out west. And you could also use canals and rivers, but keep in mind, you can only go where the river is. So if it's not taking you where you want to go, you're kind of out of luck. I would say the most popular routes by far moving out west are the Oregon Trail. That is the blue one here that goes to the northwest. And then the Santa Fe Trail, which is the one that goes, it's here in red, to the southwest. Along the way, though, there are a lot of dangers. You could be attacked by Native Americans who feel, again, like Americans are encroaching upon their land. You could be attacked by criminals or outlaws who are taking advantage of the fact that there's very little law enforcement out there. There's also issues with weather and terrain and disease, getting caught, in the mountains, or getting caught in a tornado or in a snowstorm or a blizzard or something like that. There is a video here if you want to go watch this on your own time, but it's about the Donner Party, which is basically a group of people moving out west who got trapped in the mountains, Sierra Nevada mountains during winter. A lot of them died, and the survivors ended up eating the people who died, resorting to cannibalism. So, super rare example of, moving out west gone wrong, but it definitely happened. So there were some dangers. Another danger would just be running out of supplies. If you can't make it to the next town or like a little outpost before you run out of supplies, then you're kind of out of luck, and unless someone passes you and decides to help you. But a lot of people thought that despite these dangers, it was worth it for the opportunities that it provided. So real quick, we got to talk a little bit of politics. The president who's most closely associated with Manifest Destiny is President Polk. James K. Polk. He was born in the Charlotte area, but he's also associated, I think, with Tennessee. I think he moved there later on in his life. But anyway, he ran for president in 1844, and his big campaign was on the addition of land. He was like, if I become president, I'm going to add land to this country. So he focuses first on Texas. In 1844, the gag order on the debate on slavery in Texas is lifted, and he immediately adds it as a slave state. Now, this is going to anger the northern free states because Texas is huge. Also, there is a controversy with Mexico because Mexico believes that part of Texas was actually still Mexican. And so this is going to cause a war that we'll talk about later on called the Mexican-American War. Another piece of land that Polk is interested in adding is Oregon. So back in 1818, I believe it was, the US and Great Britain, who owned Canada, decided to jointly share this territory, the Oregon Territory. But Polk is now like, listen, I want it all. So what he does is he has the slogan that he repeats in his campaign to become president. It's called 54-40 or fight. Basically saying the U.S. wants all this land up until the 54-40 parallel line, or they're going to fight Great Britain for it. Polk, though, and Great Britain know that neither one of them wants to go to war over this. So Polk actually sends a diplomat over to Great Britain, and they negotiate, and they come up with the Oregon Treaty, where basically they decide to just split the land in half at the 49th parallel right here. Above, north of this line will stay British and later become Canada. South of this line would become the U.S., and later be split into two new states, Oregon and Washington. So this was a great peaceful resolution to this land dispute that was going on between the U.S. and Great Britain. But like I said, we are going to have a war with Mexico that we'll talk about in a few objectives, in which Polk adds a lot of land, not just Texas, but other areas like California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, parts of Utah. But we'll talk all about that a little bit later on this unit.